Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Tuesday evening to you all. I hope you guys are doing great out there tonight and had yourselves a wonderful day. And I do hope everyone's been having a great week out there so far. There's a lot to talk about with the tropics, and we're here to give you a detailed update on the latest as far as model guidance from today into this evening. And the first thing we'll discuss is current conditions out here in the tropics. We'll discuss the latest from the National Hurricane Center. We'll even show you a really good graphic from the Climate Prediction Center, which pretty much highlights what we've been talking about over the last several days, and that's the fact that an active period of tropical activity is most likely on the way. We'll compare all model guidance. We'll geek out with you guys a little bit, discuss the environmental background of the Atlantic and how it could support a lot more tropical activity as we move forward. So if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it, and if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling tonight. Let's make sure this is going to work, and it is. We're good to go. So this is Tropical Storm Dexter. It continues to move out into the North Atlantic. It will continue to move that way and not really bother anybody. So I'll get that back off your screen. The next name is Aaron with an E. What will take that name? Well, we got to watch multiple areas. I want to circle this. This is sort of some tropical activity, a lot of shower and storm activity indicated by these colors you see on your screen, sort of the yellows, the oranges, the reds, blacks embedded in those colors. This indicates colder cloud tops, which means we have some taller convection. The taller up it gets, the colder it gets. And this is being shown by these colors on your screen. So we'll watch this circled area. I'm going to get that back off your screen. This will sort of drift in this direction and kind of merge with some energy that could get going off sort of a leftover boundary from our cold front that's been hanging around, the boundary from our cold front that's been hanging around for quite some time, for the last several days, and bringing a lot of really cool and wet weather across the Carolinas and Georgia. These will have an opportunity to merge, and we could actually get tropical development right in here. We'll talk about that with the latest from the National Hurricane Center here in a second. So that'll be the first area we watch. Nothing really crazy going on with that right now. The next thing we'll circle is way out here in the Atlantic, the MDR, which stands for Main Development Region of the Tropical Atlantic. And it's pretty convectively active this evening, meaning there's a lot of moisture, a lot of shower and storm activity out here, indicated by all these colors you see here, colder cloud tops, a lot of storm action, taller updrafts, and it's what we call the monsoon trough. So when this is really active, we could get a dominant wave that could develop, sort of form some low-level features, and then next thing you know, we got a tropical cyclone. So our wave we're really going to try to watch here as of right now is somewhere into here. And I mean, it's not really separating itself from all this other stuff, but something will likely emerge out of this area right here. And where will it go next? That's a big question. Will it go sort of like this? Will it drift a little bit further to the west like that? But that'll be a big discussion in this video. And then another discussion will be what happens behind this. And I think model guidance is going to continue to struggle with any wave that hasn't made it over the Atlantic yet. I do want to say that right off the dot, and I'll talk about what I mean later in the video. So just kind of drawing and circling and all that stuff with all the pieces in the puzzle out here in the Atlantic. So this is the latest from the National Hurricane Center around the 5 p.m. update from this afternoon. And what's changed is we moved from a 30 to a 40% chance of tropical development in this area right here. And that X is where they think sort of this weak surface trough or energy could get going. And then we'll have a 40% chance to develop sometime between now and the next 7 days, and develop meaning into a depression or a next named storm. So we definitely need to watch this. And it says a tropical depression could form by the latter portion of this week or weekend as the low starts to slowly, drift west. But model guidance doesn't necessarily back that idea up. But, what do? You side with model guides or actually human beings from the National Hurricane Center. But we definitely got to figure this one out. This will be the first thing we discuss in this video. The next thing is this wave that it's actually saying is right around here. We'll have a 50% chance to develop once it gets into this orange area into a tropical depression or our next named storm. By the way, it's Aaron with an E. Okay, now the National Hurricane Center does not have this area highlighted yet, but I could see them putting a low chance of tropical development behind this at some point. And I'm going to talk about why when we get deeper in the video. If you've been tuning in, you know why. But let's continue to move forward here. Now I'm going to show you a graphic from the Climate Prediction Center when we discuss the main development region segment. Let's speak on a little bit closer to home. So kind of put your eyes down here. You're going to see a lot of green, yellows and oranges and reds kind of embedded in the screen. Just think of all this as moisture, shower and storm activity. Now, what we watch for here as we are looking at the latest Euro, does anything sort of become consolidated? You see the circle here. This is indicating a lowering pressure. This is getting into Friday morning, and it tries to spin something up. You know, as we get into the weekend, this is like Saturday morning, develops a low pressure here, but it's heading back out to sea, almost taking the exact same route as Dexter took. And it doesn't bother anybody. Now, you're also going to see a little bit of activity down here in the northern Gulf that dances around too. And I think that's worth watching as we get into the weekend. Okay? Now, you don't see a whole lot from that. I know. I don't even see a whole lot from that. But if you actually look at the lower level VORT, energy in the lower levels of the atmosphere, this is where we can kind of try to find that lower level circulation. You start off Thursday morning, you can already see sort of a little spin in the atmosphere. These wind barbs are sort of rotating around one another. And that little spin, you know, doesn't even bother anybody. It stays several hundred miles off the North Carolina coastline. Well, a few hundred miles off the Carolina coastline, then heads northeast. But then you see a little spin down here at the bottom of your screen too. It gets going in the eastern Gulf. That's interesting. It's a little bit. So I think that these are two areas we got to watch, right into here and then right into here. Now, the latest model guidance shows that even if something does develop, it doesn't even move into land anymore. And I think that's a possibility. Now, what about the latest GFS? What does it show? This is the one that, I mean, it's still running right now, so this is fresh off the press here. So we started to get into Thursday morning. You know, same thing. The greens, splashes of yellow, orange, and red. This is shower and storm activity. Do you find any sort of dominant low pressure? It does have a more consolidated area of energy off the North Carolina coastline right here. And it does try to spin something up, but it really ain't much of anything. It follows exactly what the Euro shows. Is there anything after that, like in the Gulf? Not really. There's nothing that really shows up here. There is something that's about to show up on your screen here, and that we'll discuss that later in the video when we talk about the main development risk here in a second. But honestly, both models do not show much. And another way to look at this, the low-level energy right here. You see the broad spin here and these kind of highlighted colors in yellows, orange, and reds. This is the more orange and red you see on your screen, the more energy there is in the lower levels of the atmosphere. And I mean, there's a little spin here, but I can tell you, over the last 24, 36 hours, auto guidance has kind of chilled out a little bit with this homegrown threat. Now, I think something can spin up, but you look at the latest Euro ensemble, makes up 51 members on this output, throws every member that forms on our screen. So you're going to see multiple L's. Please don't think there's like a ton of low pressures out here. So first off, I'm not seeing as many L's as I was showing you the last few videos. They form here, and then they immediately head north. I don't even think one member goes into the Carolina coastline. And then we get into this weekend and the early next week, and you see some members pop up down here in the Gulf. I think that is something to watch. So you probably take from this like, well, we don't have to worry about this anymore. No, I would not take everything I just said as that. Listen, model guidance struggles with homegrown activity. One thing we got working with this, we got pretty much everything working with this, if some sort of dominant low-level feature develops. This is sea surface temperatures in Celsius. So right off the coast of the southeast, you got 29, 30 degrees Celsius sea surface temperatures, which you turn that into Fahrenheit, upper 80s in some spots. So waters are plenty warm enough, and they are definitely plenty warm enough in the Gulf. I mean, they're in the upper 80s, even low 90s in certain areas. So it's like a bathtub out here. Check that off the box. The other thing that I'm not going to pull up is the upper wind pattern favors outflow, especially on the northern edge of the storm. So a lot of air will be being pushed out away from the storm if something forms. And this will allow for, I think it'll give this system a boost. And basically, it's just lighter flow aloft. And I do think if something can get going, I think it could latch on to what is a favorable environment. But does something get going? That's kind of the beginning stages. Is do you get the birth of something? If you get the birth of it, and we're talking about tropical systems, obviously not a baby here, but if you get the birth of it, then it can tap into stuff. So Yeah. But moving past this, let's go on to this and discuss our potential out here in the main development region, the tropical Atlantic, even slipping into the Southwest Atlantic and even portions of the Caribbean. So this dropped today, and this sort of doubles down on what we've been talking about over the last several days, and that's the fact that the Atlantic is going to become more active outside of even the homegrown activity possible that we just talked about. So global tropics hazard outlook, this is valid for week 2, and we got week 3 down here. From August 13th through the 19th, it's saying that in this red area, that there's at least a 40% chance of a tropical cyclone developing. And sort of the striped red and white area, a 20% chance. And then it highlights the potential, what looks like just another tropical wave behind it. This is going to, and I'm about to talk about this, this kind of signals to us that it's buying a little bit of what the euro is showing, which I'll show you the euro here in a second. And like I said, if you've been tuning in for a while, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But even the 20th through the 26th, it shows a 20% chance of a tropical development out here in the tropical Atlantic once again from the 20th to the 26th of August. So it's highlighting areas already. Now we'll get another update from these guys in about a week, but this was the update that dropped today. So it's interesting. They're seeing it too, not just some random guy being me or anybody else on YouTube. So let's start off by looking at the Euro Ensemble guidance. This makes up 51 members. I want you to ignore this clutter right here and anything in the Gulf. Okay, we've already talked about that. And this is what's left over of Dexter. And this is our area of interest wave that has a 50% chance as of right now to develop. Okay, so this is starting off Friday morning. Let's move this in time. We get into Saturday morning. This area of interest right here on the Euro Ensemble, if it forms into a tropical system, not sure anyways. Either way, there's going to be some sort of lower pressure, and that's being indicated by this heavy signal of L's that you see on your screen. Now, it takes this and it looks like it begins to gain latitude, finds a weakness in the steering currents, and a lot of these members begin to turn north. Now, there is a couple stragglers down here that continue to sort of hang west, get a little bit close to Bermuda, which is this little speck right here. But this looks like a classic recurving look, but we're not going to assume that that's what's going to happen. Okay, let's not do that. So while the Euro Ensemble likes the idea of this wave that we're about to talk about turning, it shows another signal for a tropical wave down here showing up behind this, which there's a lot of people chattering about this one. This is the one that keeps dropping huge hurricanes in like the Caribbean and the Southwest Atlantic. So you see just a bunch of L's down here scattered all over the place. And what you take from this is that there's going to be more tropical waves that most likely come off Africa. And I think you combine that with what I think will be a more favorable environment, and I'll explain why here in a second. You're going to have a chance for one or two, or maybe a bunch of these tropical waves to develop. And you continue to move all the way to 10 days out, and then you have a strengthening signal for some sort of tropical system potentially getting together as it gets closer to the Caribbean islands here. And then there's many more L's back here signaling maybe another tropical wave. So what about the GFS ensemble? Well, you move this here in time. That's the first wave that has that 50% chance to develop. All right. And remember, this only makes up 21 members. So naturally, you're not going to see as many L's on your screen. And it looks like it forms about half of these members. But a lot of these begin to turn out to sea. There's a few that hang west. And then you got just energy forming in the Caribbean off this run. And we got a little bit of a signal for a tropical wave down here. It's not as heavy as the Euro. And it does kind of get some energy. And we're going to stop it at day 10. It kind of gets some sort of tropical energy, sweeps it across the Caribbean. And you got some of these members trying to get into the Gulf. You got some of these in the Caribbean. You got a signal for a wave out here. It is just a very spread out look. And I know I keep saying signal. I wouldn't even call it a signal because you got so much of a spread of members at different locations on this ensemble run. Now, what does the Euro show? And I'll tell you right off the dot, the Euro is kind of backing off in intensity and the shorter term. which is still the long range, by the way. So it takes that first wave, has that 50% chance to develop. It's right here. It's not much of anything. And it gains latitude and actually gets this stronger as it gets further north in the Atlantic. Meanwhile, there's another wave under it that looks very dried out at first. This is trying to develop into something, but still a very weak low pressure. We're 1 week out, or literally a week from right now. And we have a strengthening tropical wave starting to sneak into the Caribbean with another tropical wave back here. Okay? Now, we get about over 10 days out, and we'll just go on and switch it to this. Here's that tropical wave, and I want to stop it right here. This is 10 days from now, August the 15th. Okay? Has a pretty stout tropical wave getting into the Eastern Caribbean. But if you do look at the run from last night, yeah, this had a tropical storm already at this point. You look at the run from yesterday afternoon, it had this at a hurricane heading towards the Leeward Islands. So the shorter term and the longer range has this weaker. But it's still, if any wave that's intact makes it into this area of the Atlantic, it's going to develop. Now you continue to move this forward, and it proceeds past 300 hours out to develop this into a tropical storm, eventually a hurricane, and hit somebody. And I know that I'm saying that lightly. I say it lightly, guys, because it's so far out. Anything that's going to get in the Caribbean is going to hit somebody. It's not like it's going to put it in reverse, Terry, and then head back out into the tropical Atlantic, right? So the GFS, what does it show? We got about 9 or 10 days worth of the GFS. So it takes this first wave. If you've been tuning in for a while, and there's probably other YouTubers talking about this too that do the weather, the GFS still likes the first wave. It really wants to remain this intact. 1,008 millibar low. This is this coming Sunday morning. It's getting just northeast of the Lesser Antilles, and it actually begins to strengthen this into the Southwest Atlantic. And I'm going to show you more of that here in a second. And it doesn't, 10 days from now, doesn't show a tropical wave behind this. Instead, once again, let's move forward really fast. Once again, the GFS continues to double down on this first wave and strengthens this in the Southwest Atlantic. This is the Turks Caicos Islands, the Bahamas. This is Puerto Rico, Hispaniola. I had somebody this morning say I never mentioned Puerto Rico. I don't know why people, I understand, people, it's the same thing with the lower 48. People just, it makes them feel better when you say their state. But it's not going to change. That's why it's not a knock on anybody. It will do you good if you knew geography, guys. And just because I don't say your state, say your island on the map, guys, you got to know where you're at. So if I don't actually say it out loud, you can kind of see Puerto Rico hurricane, right? I mean, this obviously isn't hitting them. And even if it was, it doesn't matter because it's so far out. I mean, it's a week out. It's not so far out, but this is still an anomaly run. But let's get back to the weather here. So we have a strengthening hurricane between day 7 and day 10, and this is turning into a major hurricane. Where does it go after this? Well, the run stops here, and it doesn't really matter, guys, because it's so far out. But what does matter is that the GFS continues to like the first wave, which, by the way, guys, it's this right here. It likes this wave right here. And that is why I think the National Hurricane Center is kind of keeping the avenue up right down here because, they're saying, hey, we cannot completely rule out the GFS. But its ensembles don't really agree with it. So let's not rule it out. But it looks like, I really think this is going to recurve. But it might not. Okay, so it's got just about a major hurricane off the coast of the southeast. You don't want a major hurricane getting this close. So what I'll say is this, and this is when we nerd out, discuss the environmental background of the Atlantic. Okay, we're going to start this tomorrow morning. It's pretty cut and dry here. The brown areas you see on your screen, that's dry air. The green area, moist air. Okay, so here comes the first wave on the latest, this is the EPS. Okay, so Euro ensemble. This first wave right here, it does have a nice little pocket of moisture with it. It heads north, kind of plows into some dry air, and then this sort of leaves a little bit more moist air behind it, but still a lot of dry air kind of trying to get into the monsoon trough, but not as much. Now, maybe not deep moisture. The entire MDR out here looks like it's got a lot of moisture. Okay, you compare that with kind of right now, there's a lot of dry air kind of dipping down into this area. You see this dry air, it's kind of digging pretty far south into this main area right here, the main development region. Okay, now as we skip forward to next week, we have a main kind of a larger slug of moisture right into this area. And a lot of times, we talk about this sometimes, you sacrifice a couple tropical waves to moisten up the environment. So all of a sudden, a third tropical wave might come and it says, hey, appreciate y'all sacrificing yourselves. I'm going to take advantage of the moist environment you left behind. Thanks for the moist environment. And that happens. So suddenly, about a week from today, we have more of a moist environment out here. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, that means that tropical systems like more moist air. Okay, and you continue, and we get between day 7 and day 10, kind of just an avenue of moist air out here. So I think that would help aid in these tropical systems. And as we get like 300 hours out, I mean, the entire Atlantic basin down here looks pretty moist. Okay, so that's something to watch. Another thing to watch is if this secondary or third wave does form, if anything, and I'm just going to kind of narrow this down to the Caribbean, the Southwest Atlantic, and the Gulf, right here, and right here. If anything gets, I'm going to show you the latest operational Euro, gets into the Caribbean or in any of these other two areas, it's going to be working with obviously really warm sea surface temperatures, 80s and 90s. I don't even have to show you that. Just take my word for it. Okay? What about the upper wind pattern? For example, when the Euro gets a wave into the Caribbean, and if you look at, this is winds at, 35, 40,000 feet up in the air. Okay? And this is the low pressure itself, spinning cyclonically. But there's a lot of air being dispersed out away from the system just like this. Okay? This is your textbook, I wouldn't say textbook, but it's getting close and eventually does, of a ULAC, upper level anticyclone. You don't really know that these systems are going to go up under one of these until you get closer. But I do think that the upper wind pattern, once these tropical systems have an opportunity to get all the way to this area of the ocean, will be very favorable for tropical development and basically for a lot of disbursement of air on top of these systems, because the system itself isn't chilling at 40,000 feet. The lower to mid levels is where that convection is. That lower level is where that low level circulation is. The mid levels is where you look for convection that's on top of the low levels, that's kind of protecting the heart and soul of the system, which is the low level circulation. And then you go way on top of the system, which is where the air is on this graphic I'm showing you. And if air is being pushed out away from the system, maybe your initial thought is, well, that will negatively impact the system. It doesn't. Air is being pushed away, allows for more air to rise. That gets pushed away. Just it allows for basically a ventilation cycle. So rising air allows for more shower and storm activity. Shower and storm activity creates a moist environment. Tropical systems love a moist environment. So that is something we got to watch. If any tropical systems get into this area, is divergence aloft. A lot of dispersion of air on top of this system. And these things will be ventilating very well. And then this is your classic look for a ULAC, upper level anticyclone. And basically, these systems are spinning like this in the lower levels. But in the upper levels, on top of the system, is spinning anticyclonically, which is like this. So that thing is just, it is just ventilating well. Light flow aloft. This system's creating its own environment. It's cocooned itself at this point. And I know you think maybe I'm speaking on this as, it's like, dude, why are you breaking down a system 306 hours out to death? Well, It's not that because I think there's going to be 1,000 millibar low right here exactly. It's mainly just explaining what we will inevitably talk about later in hurricane season, whether that's next week, 2 weeks from now. And that's eventually one of these tropical systems will undergo some sort of RI, rapid intensification. And this is one of the key things on why they do it. Very, very good upper wind pattern and very warm sea surface temperatures. So why does the first system look to recurve out to sea? Even though the GFS says no, it's not going to do that. That's because we don't have a dominant high pressure out here. So you see the warmer colors like right here, right here. This is a ridge of high pressure. And you don't have like this right here over this. I mean, yeah, you got this, but it's kind of broken apart. There's going to be some sort of upper level low feature too that kind of dives in. So basically, our tropical system right here, if there's anything at all, is going to just kind of find a weakness right here and go into this white area, which is a weakness between a ridge and some sort of low pressure. And one of the reasons also is because if you turn and look at this right here, you see this little circle thing right here? That's an upper level low or a tut. And this will actually help yank some sort of tropical system this way and actually probably help weaken it. And then once it gets into the main jet up here, it could boost it, but it loses its tropical characteristics once it gets this far up. So this will actually help yank it to the north. Now the thing that we watch for as we move in time for the second or even third or just waves to come is as we move further in time. Remember, the Euro shows some sort of wave, kind of another wave kind of down to here. Looks like we have some sort of ridge that builds on top of the main development region, and this could keep your flow sort of going east to west like this. Okay, because the flow goes around these, ridges of high pressure, like it'll go around this, like that. So ridge kind of builds on top of this region, allows for these systems to potentially continue just to cruise west. And, as we start to get into a week from today, could be a little weakness that develops, something we got to watch too. But I still think there is light ridging right here, weak ridging, I should say, right in here that you barely can see. And this is keeping some sort of tropical system right down here. But it's such weak ridging that it's not showing up in sort of the orange and salmon colors or stuff like that right here. So, what stinks about this is this isn't really a great example of steering currents. So there's going to be better examples in the future to show you and break down steering currents, but this isn't the best one. So just stay tuned. There's a lot to continue to figure out, guys. There is. So that's all I got. God bless all y'all. We'll do it again tomorrow morning, and we'll talk soon. God bless.